Good evening, Madam Chair.
How are you?
Very well.
Well, Mr. Lucas, if it's 6:03, I mean, I'm ready to start if everyone else is ready.
Madam Chair, I believe that we are now recording.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, October 8th, 2020. We will start by reading the aldermanic notice for this evening. The Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Thursday, October 8th, 2020 at 6 p.m. via video conference. Meeting can be viewed at https://bit.ly/3kvjxg7 or by phone at 646-558-8656. Meeting webinar ID 930-934-6093. Phone password 682-19313. The Finance Committee will hear the following items. Item number 1, LM-2020-0400. Order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven, authorizing the execution of the Local 3429 Paraprofessionals Agreement with the Board of Education for the period of July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2023. Item number 2, LM-2020-0297, Order of the Board of Alders authorizing the City Emergency Procurement Committee to solicit on behalf of the city electrical, natural gas rates, telephone, general utilities, and other emergency conservation measures and revenue generation that will benefit the city globally out to December 2026. Item 3, LM-2020-0353, Order of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven, authorizing the Mayor of the City of New Haven to submit an application to the Federal Emergency Management /AFG to purchase a firefighter accountability system for $361,092 and to accept such funds if offered, and to execute all documents and contracts as necessary. These items are filed with the city clerk and may be inspected at room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven. Per order, Honorable Yvette Hamilton, Chair. Attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance, 203-946-8122 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY. Public may join the meeting and may send public comments to public testimony@newhavencity.gov via video conference. Meeting can be viewed at https://bit.ly/3kvjxg7 or by phone at 646-558-8656. Meeting webinar ID 930-9346-6093. Phone password 682-19313. Welcome everyone to our Finance Committee meeting. As per usual, we'll start by taking the attendance by roll call, then we'll identify additional alders that have joined us, and then as usual, my vice chair will go through the protocol and we'll go straight into the meeting. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Alder Adam Marchand.
Here.
Alder Ernie Santiago. Alder Sal DeCola,
Here.
Alder Jeanette Morrison, Alder Taisha Walker Myers,
Here.
Alder Anna Festa,
Here.
Alder Richard Furlow,
Here.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez, Alder Charles Decker.
Here.
Alder Ron Hurd. Okay. Thank you to everyone that has joined us. I'd like to also recognize Alder Abby Roth that's with us this evening, joining us from the audience. At this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to my Vice Chair, Alder Marchand, to go over the procedures of how our meetings will be conducted. Alder Marchand, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will proceed this evening as we have proceeded over the past several months. Madam Chair will lead us through the meeting. When it's time for committee members to ask questions of the maker of an item, she will ask us in the order our names are listed in the website. We ask people, please, your best to try to stay within 4 questions per item. At the chair's discretion, at the end, if there's time for additional questions, she may offer that opportunity. When it's time to vote this evening, whether it's to close the meeting or to move an item, she will once again call the roll and we'll vote in that way as we just introduced ourselves. In conversations with staff this afternoon, we've had the recommendation that items 1 and 2 are both time sensitive, and that perhaps the best way to proceed is for this committee to take no action, but for the chair to write a letter to the board leadership asking that those items be discharged by the full board in its next meeting. And so if that remains the recommendation, then we will not take action on those items tonight. We will hear them and ask questions, of course. Regarding item number 3, we've been told by this administration that the submission of this item was an error, that this application already went in and its submission was previously approved. And so that item will be a leave to withdraw item. We'll recommend that to the full board. So in essence, this evening, our agenda has 3 items on it, but there's really just 2 that we're going to discuss, items 1 and 2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. And with that, we'll start with item number 1, the paraprofessionals contract.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Michael Pinto, Chief Operating Officer with the New Haven Public Schools, 449 Central Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Good evening, sir.
Before you is the renewal or the new collective bargaining agreement for the Paraprofessionals Union, Local 3429, AFSCME, AFL-CIO. The contract is to cover the period, is a 4-year contract covering the period between July 1st, 2019 and extending to June 30th, 2023. This contract is coming to you now. We had been in negotiations. The Board of Ed had been in negotiations, started negotiations in May of 2019 with the Paraprofessionals Union. However, a number of negotiations were delayed on at the request of the union on at least 2 occasions while they worked out changes in the union leadership. So we had actually had very productive discussions early in the process in May of 2019 and anticipated the resolution of the contract by June of 2019. However, as I mentioned, the remainder of because of the changes, two sets of changes in the to the union leadership, it was delayed until negotiations then took hold in May or thereabouts of 2020, and were concluded at by the end of by the end of July 2020. As I said, this is a 4-year contract. There is the first year, there is no wage increase. Part of that was we had anticipated there would have been, but for the delays in the negotiating. The second year, which is effectively the current year, there's a 2.4% general wage increase. However, no step increase. In the third year of the contract, there's no GWI, but there is it does incorporate step increase. And then in the fourth year, 2.4% GWI, but no step increase. Overall, the total financial impact is approximately 10.3% increase for a total financial impact of $1,199,696. The contract also includes an increase in the stipend of $45 a day, or to $45 a day, in addition to a para's ordinary salary if they fill in as a substitute teacher. And there's also, it also maintains the educational incentive. Not all paras are required to have a college degree, but there are educational incentives and reimbursements for taking college semester credits. That is the general overview of the contract. Again, it's a 4-year contract. The additional year was incorporated to cover the fact that we were delayed in the initial negotiations. Obviously, the reason this is before you is because it is a multi-year contract, and we do bring those to you. Am I able to be heard? I'm just making.
No,
Making
thank
sure-
you. I believe our chair is reconnecting, so if you'll just bear with her for one
Fair
moment.
enough. Fair enough. I was just making sure it wasn't my.
Nope, we could hear you. Thank you so much, Mr. Pinto.
Course.
Madam Chair, are you back with us? I believe you are. You're muted at the moment.
I apologize. I'm having a little technical difficulties right now. Where I lost you for a moment.
Madam
My
Chair,
apologies.
Mr. Pinto completed his brief presentation.
Okay. So now we're going into questioning, which would start with you, Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Pinto, for your presentation. I did see that the health premiums increase. It appears that they increase 2 percentage points over the life of the contract. I guess I would like to know more about where those premium shares, contribution percentages began and where they end up. I'd also like to know if there's any other changes to the plan design, or if those other elements such as copays and deductibles and so on, if they're going to remain the same as they are now. And also, does this contract already have the health incentive plan in it, or is that to be added, or is that not to be added? So those are all questions related to the medical benefit portion of the contract.
Yeah, I believe the percentage goes from 11 to 13%, but I am happy I will confirm that. I apologize that our Chief Financial Officer was not able to join us this evening. Allow me to provide you with that additional information on and I will get that, pull that from Mr. Penn and from to answer your questions on those. I apologize. I do not have it in front of me.
Thank you. Through the chair, I would like to request that information.
Absolutely.
Noted, Alderman Marchand. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Pinto, can you tell me about the incentive program, or maybe Mr. Gormany knows that? These are the required preventive care actions that people have to do in order to avoid a fee, chronic disease counseling. You know, it's something that's pretty common feature now in the medical benefit plans of the city's your organized unionized workforces.
Allow me to defer to Mr. Gorman if he has that information in front of him.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
thank
Mr.
you.
Gorman. Good evening. Your name and address for the record before you start, sir.
Yep, Michael Gormley, 45 Jefferson Road, Branford, Connecticut.
Thank you.
Alderman Marchand, I'm sorry. I can get that information for you. I do not have that in front of me at the moment.
Okay, through the chair, I would definitely request that. My last question, Madam Chair, is are there significant training or operational issues that this contract addresses? The description that we received was fairly sparse, and it may be because you didn't talk about a whole lot of things, but it would be interesting to know if there are important operational or training issues, classification issues that this contract addresses that may support these workers and improve and help the city at the same time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can you, Alderman Marchand, can you simply repeat that? You broke up just a little bit. I think one of the crucial points of the question.
Sure. I'm Zooming from my kitchen, so
I understand.
it's not the main Ethernet connection, so I apologize in advance. Contracts cover a lot of ground. They cover a wealth of issues, from health and safety to operations, to classification, to grievance procedures, to usually the table of contents for a union contract usually has like 20 articles in it, right?
Right.
And so the description from the Board of Ed is about wage increases, premium increases. You mentioned the educational incentives. You mentioned a few other things. So there's like 4 items that you mentioned, and it may be those were just the 4 items you discussed, but there's usually negotiations. There's like dozens of other things that are discussed. And so I'm just asking if there are other significant issues that were resolved in these negotiations that we as a committee ought to know about.
Those 4 areas were the primary areas of discussion. Some items were offered and then withdrawn and simply reverted to the existing contract language from the expired contract. But the areas that I highlighted are the areas, and obviously the areas that you have just mentioned and that we highlighted in the presentation. Although it seems brief, those were the primary areas of contention. We had put on the table an additional educational incentive. But in the negotiations, the area that the union wanted to focus on was the wage increases and holding down the healthcare premium increases as well. So those were the primary areas of trade-off and discussion. Most of the other items were either withdrawn or effectively resolved without, just by going back to the original or the expired contract language.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. And of course, we don't need to review all the provisions of the contract that have been previously ratified and approved by this board in the past. So of course, it makes sense to focus on the things that are changing. And I'm glad to know that this is a brief list of items. Thank you, Mr. Pinto. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marchand. Alder Ernie Santiago is not on the line, am I correct? So we'll move on to Alder Sal DeCola. Do you have questions, Alder DeCola?
Yes, I have one.
Go right
Is there
ahead, sir.
Any old MOUs on this? Any at all that are gonna pop up 2 years from now that we don't know about? You're on mute.
I'm sorry, there are no additional, no MOUs that were not attached, were identified by either party. And obviously the contract language eliminates those that are not brought forward. Let me just double check to see if there might have been one that remained attached. Apologies. My apologies. The one of the MOUs is the health insurance program, the incentive plan. I'm sorry. There is one at the end, which was the settlement agreement that dates back to 1999. Which covered diapering responsibilities. So that, and again, that remained unchanged.
All right, so there's no other MOUs that is in that contract. If one pops up, it should not count,
That's
meaning it
correct.
doesn't exist.
That's correct.
Have that writing in there that
Yes.
we don't want somebody to pull one out of their pocket and say, oh, by the way. Okay, I just want to make sure on that. And then seeing that the city of New Haven re-identified a Columbus Day, how is it worded as their holiday for now? It's called Italian Heritage Day in the contract.
The contract was negotiated prior to the discussion about the change in the name of the Columbus Day holiday. We can certainly circulate it however the Board of Alders directs that it, if they direct that it be identified as Italian Heritage Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, that can be, we can add that as, we could add that and swap out those pages.
All right, we'll talk about this going before we vote on it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm certainly happy to take that back to the negotiating team and to the union.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alder DeCola. Alder Jeanette Morrison just sent word that she cannot join us this evening. So Alder Walker Myers, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Pinto, for presenting. I just have one question. Do you know approximately how many times a para actually acts as a substitute?
I don't offhand. I will get that information to you.
Thank you.
But again, if they do, this contract increase the daily stipend to $45 a day in addition to their normal wages.
Thank you. Yes, that information would be important for me anyway. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker Myers. Alder Fester, you're up next, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions, and they deal with how do we compare with other cities and towns and pay wage wise, and are we competitive?
The wages were somewhat low, but the addition of added step increase will bring them competitive with the other large certainly with the other large urban districts and some of our reasonably comparable surrounding areas as well.
Okay,
We've
and
actually-
how
we've
does
actually-
our,
I was gonna say, we've actually moved, the paras are now at the higher end of the pay scale for comparable jobs in the area.
okay, that's good to know. And how is our para pool? Are we okay with the number of paras we have, or are we short-staffed? And if we are short-staffed, does it have anything to do with pay?
Yeah, I believe we're at reasonable staffing rates at this point. It is not, in our executive team meetings, it has not been raised as a significant issue.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Alder Furlow, you're up, sir.
I don't think I have any questions at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is Alder Evelyn Rodriguez on the call with us? If not, Alder Decker, you're next, sir.
I have no questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And do we have Alder Ron Hurt here at all? No. All righty, that's all of our Is there anyone from the committee that might have any additional questions for Mr. Pinto or Mr. Gormany regarding the paraprofessionals contract? Anyone from no other committee questions? All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Point
Thank
of
you.
order, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Did you want to ask the public if they want to testify now, or do you want to do the second item? and
I
then
was
the public?
gonna do the second item and then ask for
Okay.
public testimony on both items.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Or, I mean, yeah. Let's move on to item number 2. Mr. Gormany, are you presenting for the second item, sir?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Gormley, 45 Jefferson Road, Branford, Connecticut. Also, Chair, I'll have them introduced, but if Mr. Lucas or Mr. Hayden can move in Mr. Zen. And we have our energy consultant, Alexi Cherik, also. And before I get started, I'll just have them, Giovanni for the record. And
Sure. Good evening. It's always very nice when my screen says promoted the panelist, Giovanni Zinn, city engineer, 95 Soundview Terrace.
Okay.
and I believe Alexi has been moved in. Yep.
Alexi Cherniak here, Source One Energy Consulting, 80 Cedar Street, Sharon, Massachusetts.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. So thank you, committee, for hearing this matter. In 2006, the Energy Committee was formed via a resolution submitted at the time for the city to go out and procure energy, so natural gas and electricities at rates that would be beneficial to the city. When the committee was established, the committee consisted of the city controller, the purchasing agent, the city engineer, the superintendent or designee, which in the past has been the chief operating officer, and 2 aldermanic representatives.
Right.
The purpose of the committee was to lock in rates, favorable energy rates for the city, because procuring energy such as electricity or natural gas when you're looking at rates is very tricky, which is why we also contracted with Source One at the time. This is a very complex and fast-moving type of transaction, which involves our corporation counsel lawyers, the lawyers for the other company, and our energy consultant. So since 2006, the city has brought blocks of energy at favorable rates. And Mr. Zinn can correct me in any terminology I use incorrectly. But we purchase energy blocks at very favorable rates, with Source One usually leading the charge for us. And I believe, let me see, if Mr. Lucas or Mr. Hayden can just give me screen sharing capabilities. Well, until then, what I'll do is, so what I will show you is a graph basically of how the city has been able to sort of level off its energy, natural gas and energy consumption throughout the city. So what you'll see on this graph here is basically the, this is combined. This is natural gas and electricity costs for the city. So the city is in the orange and the Board of Ed is in the blue. So the committee was formed in 2006, and it took a while to sort of map out the committee and figure out the different types of purchases and working with Source One. But as you can see, since 2009, the electricity and natural gas costs have leveled off and in some years actually decreased. And actually on the Board of Ed side, it's sort of, as we open more schools, you'll see that we have sort of been able to maintain the actual electricity costs for the schools. So this was basically as a result of the work that we had done on that committee. And what we're coming before the board, the finance committee now is, in order for the committee to do purchasing, the resolutions in the past have been for a total of 5 years. And when we purchase energy or natural gas, we usually do it in multi-year blocks. So the authorization for this committee is up December of 2021, but we do have an RFP out that will give us, as we're reviewing the RFP for electricity costs, we think very favorable rates. But again, that means extending beyond 2021. So we're here to basically ask the committee for the energy committee to have authorization to purchase up until 2026. And what we've also done is, besides natural gas, is just the city's overall general utilities as well. Giovanni, do you want to add anything?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I had a little computer trouble there. So I think Michael gave you a pretty good summary here. What it helps us to do is it helps insulate the city from the real spikes in the market. You know, as you saw in those graphs, we were in the 2000s pretty much just exposed to the rising natural gas prices. And then as the committee came in, and I mean, there were also market forces, but I think the committee has done a pretty good job of leveling off what that is. So what we do, for example, is we pre-purchase a certain percentage of our electricity for a period of time, up to 2 or 3 years, and we can lock in a price. So for example, over the winter, we may lock in 75% of our electricity at a certain rate. And then 25% of that floats on what's called the day ahead market, which is a wholesale market where the prices are set for the following day, the day before. And what that allows us to do is to avoid the really big spikes in the day ahead market. If there's for example, in the Northeast, electricity prices track natural gas pricing very closely. If there's a natural gas supply constraint, geopolitical events, market forces, what have you, you can really see electricity prices spike a lot. But because we have pre-purchased those, we're set at a set rate and we're not exposed to those big spikes in the market. You know, in full honesty, there are times where the market may dip and we may not take advantage of that, but we've found over the last decade and or 12 years or so that we've done this, that is very much swamped by the times where we have absolutely made a killing by having pre-purchased electricity. So the way this actually happens is that when we get pricing, the city actually has, I think, under 24 hours to sign on the dotted line for that pricing, which is why having the energy committee be able to meet, you know, we schedule where the pricing comes in the morning, the energy committee meets, and then the mayor executes in the afternoon. It is literally that quickly. It is very beneficial and allows us to lock in these prices.
Thank you, Giovanni. So again, as Giovanni mentioned, it's a very fast process. I think typically, and I do have a 5-page PowerPoint that I will forward to the committee that Alexi was very gracious on preparing for this meeting, but we sort of wanted to go through it, talk about it before we send it to you. But, you know, the city does typically save 750 to about 1.2 million in cost avoidance each year for, you know, as Giovanni said, locking in these prices. So it's been a very reliable tool, the Energy Committee, to have for the last 9 or since 2006. And I think the city's benefited greatly financial from being able to lock in those prices. So I think with that, we'll be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Alder Marchand, you want to start, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. I thank our city staff for their presentation. My first question is, I'm just trying to remember my legislative history. And are you able, Mr. Gormany or Mr. Zinn, to tell me how long ago was the original order or ordinance passed to enable this method of purchasing energy? And did that order or ordinance have a provision about annual renewals? Did that order or ordinance contemplate multi-year renewals? I just want to understand the kind of scope of authorization or the scope of the enlargement of the authorization that we're giving in this order, that we would be giving in this order.
Sure. So the original order, and I actually have it, was adopted on 9/18/2006, which basically established Source One as our energy procurement consultant and also established the committee. What the order did was it gave the committee the availability to purchase natural gas and electricity for a period of not more than 5 years. So it's not like we can go out and sign a 10-year agreement. It's within the provision of that actual order. And all the renewals, I believe, including the one I submitted to this committee, should have the same type of language. Again, the renewals have generally been in 5-year blocks. So there was a renewal in 2014 that brought it to 1 year. And then again, the committee's authorization expires in 21. So again, we're asking for another 5-year block. But again, we can't authorize any contracts beyond what the Energy Committee is authorized for.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't think you would get pricing in the energy market for that length of time. I mean, really 2 to 3 years out is typically where we see, and having the 5 years flexibility allows us to see what the hedges out a little further. But it's, again, I think it's pretty typical to what has been previously approved.
Thank you for that response. Source One is named in the resolution as the consultant. Is that the same consultant that the city's used since the establishment of this committee? And has the committee considered putting out the consultant contract out to bid? Is there some other entity out there that could do the same thing for us or better?
The city has generally been very, very pleased with Source One as our energy consultant. You know, I haven't necessarily been on the committee as long as some of the members, but we've been very, very pleased with the work that they've done and believe that they get us the best pricing out there in the market. Are there other companies that can possibly do what they do? I'm sure. I think that's something that, you know, the committee could look at. But to be very honest, we've been very, very happy with the work that Source One has done over these last few years.
Yeah, I would concur, and I think there's nothing preventing the committee from,
Right.
you know, choosing to look at other vendors. I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head what their contract is. It's a relatively modest amount, especially when compared to the annual energy purchase. And at this point, they're obviously very well versed on our loads, the type of loads we have, and what our you know, our buying pattern looks like compared to the marketplace.
Thank you for that. I have two more questions. My penultimate question is this. How did the order that was originally passed and that has been renewed and extended and is proposed to be extended again, how did it change the purchasing process? In other words, does the city still need to issue an RFP and follow the usual procurement protocols? This sounds just like a layering on top of that process, or does it swap out elements of that process? That's my question.
The big difference is the multi-year nature of it. So in theory, we could do an RFP and buy electricity for 1 year all the time. That would kind of really hamstring some of the savings we would get. I think you get those savings by pre-buying the second and third year. We wouldn't be able to do a multi-year purchase and, you know, and bring it to the board because of the nature of the transaction where we get the pricing and have to lock it in the same day because pricing changes on a daily basis for these contracts. So in order to lock in for more than 1 year, the board has to approve a body that can act in, you know, essentially an hour to approve the final purchase price. I think what we do is we do an RFP for pre-qualified vendors. We basically have a standard form agreement that all of the pre-qualified vendors have, and then they submit the pricing on the bid day, and we take the lowest price on bid day.
And that's currently, Alder Marchand, the stage that we're in right now with, you know, our current agreement sort of expiring with our electricity and natural gas vendors. So, you know, again, our energy consultant, Source One, you know, we did the RFP, those are out. We will, you know, convene to sort of, the energy committee will convene to sort of review those RFPs with the consultant and go from there.
Thank you for those responses. My last question is in regards to the selection. It's kind of a question of what do you ask Source One to look for? It sounds like primarily what you're asking them to look for is price. But I know that the city's energy strategy and other areas of our work focuses on the carbon footprint, focuses on the environmental impact of the method of energy generation. And, you know, natural gas could be from Pennsylvania, resulting from fracking, and that provides good prices, but it also creates all sorts of greenhouse emissions and waste that we passed an ordinance to keep out of our city. So I'm wondering what other, if any, values or issues that you're asking Source One to look into as they provide you a list of sources that you might want to buy from.
So obviously this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. You know, I'm happy to let you know that we do buy 100% renewable electricity. for the city. At this level of transaction, the sort of green elements of electricity are actually a separate transaction. You buy what are called renewable energy certificates, RECs. And those Source One helps us procure those. They actually also help us sell RECs that we generate from our fuel cells, because in the state of Connecticut, that generates a REC. And those are actually much more valuable than, say, wind RECs from any part of the United States. So we actually are able to engage in an arbitrage situation to help fund our energy costs through that. So Source One helps us through all of that. I think separately, the city is doing a lot around energy efficiency. I think one of the things we're really looking at now is building electrification. How do we resolve our dependency on natural gas and start cutting that down as well? Natural gas obviously has a lot fewer choices as to where you buy it from. You buy it from the pipeline, and there's really not much you can do about that. In fact, I think recently we've been simply buying from Southern Connecticut Gas because they were the best deal that we could get. But we certainly on the electricity side rely on Source One for some of their for a lot of their guidance in navigating the renewable energy electricity markets, and making sure that we meet our 100% renewable goals in the most cost-effective way possible.
Thank you, Mr. Zinn, for that response. I know that the city has spent a lot of effort over quite a few years now in this area. And so it remains, and that there are multiple strategies at play here. It still remains the case that the city does need some natural gas. And if you're going to buy some, then getting the best deal you can is probably a fairly prudent move. So
correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Alder Marchand. Alder Ernie Santiago, has he joined us? Moving right along, Alder DeCola, do you have questions?
Yes, well, really more of information. I sit on this committee with the group. Source One is a good company for advice, leading us, guiding us. They understand the future market. And it's true, when we have to execute, we have hours to execute because the price can jump at any time in that market. So I'm just saying is what Gormley and Mr. Gormley and Zen are actually telling us exactly how it happens. I'm in there. So I want everybody to know that the company is a good company and the process is a real savings to the city in the big picture. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder DeCola. Alder Morrison is not with us. Alder Walker Myers, you have questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Alder Festa, question?
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. Just more curiosity regarding the cell that we have and what part that plays in energy renewal or providing energy. Does it work? Do you know which cell I'm talking about? The
You're
one
talking
that's
about the fuel cell
Right
yeah,
in front of,
behind City Hall?
behind,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so the fuel cell is a 10-year lease that, or essentially it's an energy services agreement that's coming up in 2022. So we're starting to think about what to do at that point. But it provides electricity for the government center complex. It also generates renewable energy certificates in the state of Connecticut, which have been lucrative for us. And as much as $100,000 a year, roughly, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me entirely on that, but that's my recollection on it. And those we've been able to sell those and then use some of those proceeds to purchase RECs for all of our electricity from wind, for example. So we were able to. It's sort of a quirk in the law. The technology was great in 2012. I think now there are many other ways we could go, especially looking at electrification. Heat pump technology has really taken off in the last decade. So I think it's worked out over its lifetime. That isn't to say that it's necessarily the correct play for the decade after that. Or it might be. But that's one of the things that the Energy Committee will look at.
So what happens if some of this newer renewable energy sources come to fruition before 2026? I mean, is there anything that would, I guess, this contract is till 2026, but what if we find some other sources that are less expensive? Are we able to get out of the contract, or would we use it in conjunction with renewable
So
sources?
it's, if we generate our own electricity on our own sites, that is separate. And the contract is such that we don't buy 100% of our usage because we don't know exactly what the weather is going to be. So we'll lock in for probably up to about 75% of our usage, and the last 25% stays on the float of the market. And we probably won't lock in all 5 years at the start. That's where we rely on Alexi and Source One. They watch the market on a daily and hourly basis to give us a good sense of where the market is now and where it's going over the next 2 or 3 years. It's essentially the futures market, right? So as new technology, new sources come online, and the market, those bring in less expensive electricity into the market, then we would see our prices go down. As we both lock in, but also in the day ahead market. So I think there's a fair amount of flexibility here.
Okay. No, I appreciate that and the clarification, because hopefully we will develop renewable energy and sources that we can, natural sources that we can use, like even solar. I don't know where we stand with solar power. Because
We have a lot of solar power, actually. We've got 3 megawatts of
increasing.
solar arrays.
Yeah,
Well, we're running out of roofs. That's the problem.
Well, and I think I've asked you this in the past about adding the solar power to right off the highway there where it used to be our
The landfill.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I see that North Haven uses solar panels on theirs, and I can't remember your explanation.
Yeah, Hamden does as well. We looked at it. The sort of shape of the landfill in New Haven is less conducive to this than Hamden and North Haven. Slope stability is more of a concern at the time. Also, they're able to have a larger flat area at the top than what we have. They also, like North Haven has their wastewater plant right next to it. That's a giant user of electricity. We don't have anything like that right next to it. So our cost it's a lot easier when your generation and your consumption are in the same spot. You basically get compensated a lot more for it. We would have to virtually net meter it, and that keeps running into caps from the legislature. It's a somewhat complicated topic. I can certainly talk to you offline about it. But the basic point is we have actually included it in our solar solicitations, and we just haven't, no one's presented us with a deal that we thought was worth taking to this point, and maybe something worth revisiting here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, we cannot hear you. Perhaps if you unmute and mute.
I'm not on
There you
mute.
go. There you go, Madam Chair.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Alder Furlow, did you have questions on item 2?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Alder Evelyn is not with us. Alder Decker. Any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one. In the introduction to tonight's meeting, our vice chair informed us that we were instructed that this was time sensitive and should be requested to be discharged. It's not clear to me from the presentation or the materials why. So could you speak to that, please?
Sure. So I can speak. So I think in the presentation we mentioned that usually we do multi-year block buying. So with the current order expiring in 2021, any of the RFP selections that we have, we would only be able to do for 1 year under the current order if it wasn't discharged. So again, there's a very fast buying process to this, as Giovanni said, literally one day. And we are looking to meet in the next couple of weeks to review the RFP so we can sort of lock in market pricing. So if we can't go beyond 2021, that limits our ability to generate savings to the city.
Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Engineer Zinn.
No, I was just gonna say, I believe our current purchase is through the end of this calendar
This
year,
calendar
so.
year, yep.
And prices tend to rise as natural gas gets more expensive, AKA the winter. So we'd like to get this, we're trying to race ahead of the market here, essentially.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I have nothing further, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Alder Hurt, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if I recognized you before. Do you have questions, Alder Hurt?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you for recognizing me. At this time, I don't have any questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've gone through the list of committee members. I'll go back around one more time and ask, is there any member of the committee that have any additional question on this item? All right, at this time, hearing none, I will open up the for public testimony on both items. Item 1 being the paraprofessionals contract, as well as item 2, the procurement of energy for the city. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on either of these 2 items? How do I know if there's anyone from the public that wants to speak? Mr. Lucas, are you there? Anyone, Mr. Hayden?
There's no one raising their hand at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. For a second time, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on either item 1 or item 2? And for a third time, anyone from the public that wishes to speak on items 1 or 2? Hearing none?
Madam
Yes.
Chair,
Yes, Alder Marchand.
I move that we close the public portion of this meeting.
Second,
Second.
Discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
regarding this motion, I just wanted to remind colleagues that the request regarding item 3 is for it to be given leave to withdraw. We announced that at the beginning of the meeting. Hopefully nobody here showed up to this meeting hoping to testify on that item because it's moot. So we're not going to hear it tonight. So I urge my colleagues to support the motion to close the public hearing for this meeting.
Any further discussion on closing the public hearing? Do I need to call the roll? Alder Marchand, are you in favor of closing the public portion?
Yes.
Alder DeCola?
yes.
Alder Walker Myers?
Yes.
Alder Festa?
Yes.
Alder Furlow?
Yes.
Alder Decker and Alder Hurt?
Yes.
We're all in favor. The public portion of this is closed.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Alder Marchand.
you're the model of efficiency this evening, Madam Chair. I just want to remind colleagues that we have requests from the administration to move these first 2 items as quickly as possible. And I believe that the best way to do that is for us as a committee to take no action, but instead for you as the chair to request that the board discharge this item from committee in its next meeting. Having said that, I move that we recommend the 3rd item be given leave to withdraw.
Second,
The item has been moved in second. Discussion on giving the item leave to withdraw? Any discussion? No. All in favor, Alder Marchand?
Yes,
Can I say all, or do I need to call out all our names?
Madam Chair, I believe we should be consistent with our prior practice.
Okay. Alder Marchand? Alder
Yes.
Salvatore DeCola?
yes.
Alder Walker Myers?
Yes.
Alder Festa?
Yes.
Alder Furlow?
Yes.
Alder Decker?
Yes.
And Alder Hurt?
Yes.
All righty, we're all in favor.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Alder Marchand.
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Any discussion on adjourning? Alder Marchand, are you in favor? of
Aye.
adjourning? Alder DeCola,
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers,
Yes.
Alder Festa,
Yes.
Alder Earl,
Yes.
Alder Decker,
Yes.
and Alder Hurt.
Yes.
Thank you all. We are adjourned. Good night,
you.
ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.